one. Guys, what is going on? It is Friday, and you know what that means. It is time for another episode of No Label Live. And if you are joining the show for the first time, I'm your host, Nathan, and No Label Live is about ripping off all the things you were told you can't do, all the things you were told you can't be, and it's sharing experiences of influencers, entrepreneurs, and everyday people of how they combat the labels that have held them down to break through and create the label of freedom for themselves. So today's show is all about heart healthy hustle, right? And it's about proactive young entrepreneurs. So today I have on the host of Heart Healthy Hustle, Jonathan Frederick. So Jonathan, first to kind of get your story, I want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
How does a shy, skinny, ginger kid start a media company and then host a podcast that, I'm so impressed by the people that you are bringing to the audience and the value you're bringing through those guests that you have. So how did you go from that shy, skinny, ginger kid labels to creating what you are today?
Well, a couple of things. Thanks for having me on, Nathan. It means a lot. Appreciate it. Your show and everything that's going on with growth and everything. I'm really excited for you. I would say appreciate that flattering intro as well. But in all honesty, I would just say as a correction, like I don't think I know what your question means, but I didn't make it myself. I can get into that in the show.
Yeah.
I don't really take credit for any of it. I would never say anything like that. But in terms of what I did proactively, yeah, it's a great question, man. Like the shy ginger kid, like who do you think you are to do anything? I don't have like a crazy traumatic sob story. There's a lot of things that did happen to me that probably shaped my character growing up. I used to wet the bed until I was like 12. There was like, I remember a camping trip when I was like 5, or I was a little kid, and I wore a diaper, and because I was on a camping trip, so if I peed in the sleeping bag, would have had a situation.
Yeah, man.
So like that kind of stuff though can affect your shame inside for years to come. And even though in that moment, I'm so grateful back then, I could have the foresight to embrace it. So like I remember dancing around and people were cheering for me as diaper boy. I don't identify or receive that at all, but the point is I didn't take it seriously back then because the doctor told me all them were lying and they all wet the bed too. So for the question to be answered more succinctly, I guess I would say, yeah, again, I don't take credit for it, but proactively speaking, series of steps, man. Like I wanted so badly, we all long for connection and relationship, but I wanted so badly for so long. I was homeschooled until 8th grade. I just didn't know what it was like to have a loyal group of friends. Never really had that outside of the neighborhood boys on the block when I was in middle school.
Uh-huh.
And went to high school, went to multiple different schools. Then I moved away to college. And college was probably the first time I had that group. But, that wound that came from just kind of not having comrades like who really got me. I always had friends. I had cool people I loved. And, I loved my family, got along. But yeah, man, so I would try to fit in. So I did what it took. I dressed cool. I made sure I hung out with the right people. I knew what to say, how to look, how to please certain people, just so I could get that desired result. Right. But, I wasn't being fake either. A lot of that was genuine, but I was doing it in an effort to fit in. And I think we all kind of live our lives at some level, even to this day, doing that. Right. So it's like, oh, I want this desired result, so I'm going to live this type of way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember what else you mentioned in the intro. After I got sick of trying to fit in and trying like living for others, I got really sick of that, realizing it's not healthy as well. And at that point, I started taking action to do things for the life that I wanted, and realizing that it's all on me. No one's coming to save me. No girl, no romantic relationship's going to fix anything. Um, I had to fix, I have to get to work on myself before I can really provide a life that I'd be proud of to provide for my future daughter if she was to meet a guy or if I was to meet a woman.
Hmm.
And same for friendships. If I want to be the kind of friend that I want to be, I got to make sure I'm doing work on the internals, and that all that credit goes to God, because I couldn't have done that myself. But anyway, sorry for the long-winded answer. I got to get better at speaking on myself.
No, man, it's all good. I think you dropped some good stuff in there because I think, like you said, we all do long for connection, and if that's something that's not met early on, then we
Sorry.
it can open up those wounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can definitely be something that limits us if we get stuck in that story for sure. Um, Another thing you mentioned before we got on was the idea of false stories. So
Yeah.
what's an example of something that was a false story for you, and how did you start to change that story for yourself?
Can you give me some context?
Yeah. So I guess a false story would be I'm not good enough.
I got you.
Uh,
Okay.
Something like that, or something that leads with the thing
Yeah.
that we believe that we are not.
Or that we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So is there something
Yeah.
that
Gotcha.
that limited you, that you believed for a period of time, and then you realized that that wasn't true?
Yeah, man. Like, for sure, I still deal with this every single day, literally. And I think a lot of people do, but the ones who really break free of this just live with a lot more peace than even myself, I think, because it's like a constant journey um, of surrender. And it's tough because we think we have to push back and fight and claw and scrape to get to that, but to break out of those labels. But the reality is, it's about surrender. Um, the crazy part is, right, I think a false story I used to tell myself was that I'm not enough, and that therefore I'm not worthy of whatever I really wanted, whether that's finances, whether that's relationships with friends, whether that's romantic relationships, whether that's you name it. And so I started to look at, like, why don't I think I'm enough? And it's just almost like this intrinsic lie that we start to find evidence for, that,
Mhm.
unfortunately, so many of us take that too far, not catching those lies early enough, and not having not being gifted with the discernment, or being blessed with the somebody speaking into our life at a young enough age to where we take it too far and turn to depression and then drugs or anything other kind of vice that you run to when you're going through hard times.
Mhm.
And depression is no joke. Excuse me, no joke. I lost a friend to it last year, um, and I hate it. And I don't know what it's like because I never had it. But anything that we're going through, whether it's turmoil, whether it's depression, whether it's a deep-rooted shame or insecurity, we all have insecurities. But I think a big reason, and I'm getting this from a lot of different resources, but I'm thinking back to an interview I did with Dr. Rob Reamer. He wrote a book called Soul Care, and he said your soul is like a suitcase. And
Mhm.
as we go through life, the clothes you start out on a trip, the clothes are neatly folded and clean. You go through life, and things get used and dirty, and then stuff back in that suitcase to go home. Well, after each trip, you got to clear it out, right? And part of that clearing it out, for me, I believe, being where I say I stand as a believer, is that there's a lot that goes into that, but is that I have to surrender that to God, to Jesus, to let Him carry that for me. And I'm not perfect. Don't judge me. I don't judge you. Whoever's listening, I try to actually live this congruently, and I'm a hypocrite every day. Look, I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect. I don't want to be perfect. I don't think we're designed to be perfect. In fact, I know that we actually are not. So I acknowledge that in myself, and I appreciate reciprocal respect in that regard. I don't think I know more than anyone else either, right? I think that's a really sneaky little lie where people just think, oh, well, you say you call yourself this, so therefore you must believe this, this, and this. So I'm going to put you in a box. Like, I love
Mm.
your show because it's all about no labels, right? Like, no label defines me. Well, no label that someone else wants to project onto you to give them an understanding in their mind, which is a natural human thing, right? So we can't judge them back for doing that to us,
Yeah.
or if we were to do that to someone else, because it is a natural human being thing for us to want to provide context to understand things, right? It's normal.
Yeah.
Um, but I love, that's one of the reasons I love, kind of what you're saying there with no label defines me. And the way I see that is, I do accept certain labels, but it's more for me, like I don't accept a projection of somebody's ignorant, and I don't mean ignorant like mean. The word ignorant literally means lack of knowledge. So someone who doesn't have a full understanding, like if you never met, you're listening to the show, you're like, who's this guy? I never met him. He's this tall ginger kid. It's like, you never met me, you don't know me, you don't know my story yet, and I don't know you. So I would hope that you would give the opportunity for us to sit down and talk. I don't really want to say I have a chip on my shoulder in the faith arena, because I've found many people are very open to speaking with me about it, and I'm very open to learning from others about what they believe as well, and giving them the ear and the respect. So that being said, those labels are, yeah, man, the false stories that we tell ourselves, and we just perpetuate this BS through our life of like, for me, again, it was, you couldn't, I used to be pretty harsh on myself, man. I'm not trying to like have sob story here or focus on me, but I think a lot of us struggle with that, man, at some level. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think you are not alone in that. So I think that's very relatable. We spend a lot of time, like I made a post this week about the Bobo clown doll, right? We
I
spend a
hate
lot
clowns. I hate clowns. You should delete that post. I hate clowns. No.
so we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up, but the great thing about that clown, right, is it's the thing that we always come back up from all the adversity that we hit in our life, that
Yeah.
it's possible to always get back up. And I think another great thing that you touched on is that it really is about being open to communicating with other people. And for me, getting as many perspectives as possible. Because, like you said, the person on the other end of this doesn't necessarily know you, and they're not going to know you in a 40-minute interview either, completely. And
Right.
like, we've never met in person.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Because I feel like we have, just because we were in such close proximity, and I remember seeing you on the screen there at the event when you asked the question. I think you asked multiple questions, correct?
So I asked multiple questions during the event, not
Mhm.
where Lewis
Yeah.
asked for people to ask questions. Talk
Okay.
about embarrassing moment. So
I,
everybody stand up and yell my name. That was interesting.
yeah, it's awesome, man.
um, so I want to kind of get back to Heart Healthy Hustle
Yeah.
and kind of share with us what that's all about from your perspective. And one of the things I would also like to know, so who,
Hmm.
who's the show for? And
Hmm.
if we look at it in terms of labels, right? What's a label that, or an idea that you hope that your listeners are able to break through by receiving the information you're providing?
Okay. Sure. So, who is the show for? Was the first part of the question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, who is the show for? The show is for quietly generous people Honestly, I always say the show's for anyone. I don't like to alienate people out of the show, but to give you a specific niche,
Yeah.
I provide a show that we speak primarily with, like established entrepreneurs, maybe authors, musicians, people. Though we do a bounce focus on people who have made it like big and people who are up and coming, breaking out as we speak with them. So, for example, today I interviewed a girl whose music is like one of her songs has over 2.5 million plays on Spotify, but the rest of her music is virtually unplayed. So
Mm.
she's just breaking out, right? And she's such a good person. Like it was one of my favorite interviews. Honestly, I cannot wait to launch that. But go check out her music. Her name's Emily Brimlow. But yeah, the show is for people who maybe in the past, like you were saying, they had these false stories they would tell themselves, or to this day still do, and they want to hear not just be inspired, but they want to see personification of this type of success that they want. So I try to bring on different examples of that kind of like different types of success, different arenas. So it's for the proactive young professional, the just out of college all the way up to mid 30s people who are, if you're developing your values, you're going through a lot in your personal life because you're breaking out of that going out bar crawling every night to now actually reading books, and maybe you stay in and you actually treat yourself to some ice cream and a nice book, and you're like, you know what, I want to find a good podcast to listen to on the way to work instead of that obnoxious radio show that does nothing for my personal growth. So
Hmm.
you turn on your show or you turn on this podcast and you start to learn things from people who have amazing stories. But the show, again, is for people who are really fighting to break out of a box that maybe they build around themselves. So I want to see other people stepping out of their self-made boxes. Um, I think a lot of this has to do with, honestly, it's so encouraging to see people who are quietly generous, they're kind spirited, they want to see others win, they have no trouble rooting for others, even if they deal with insecurity themselves, like myself,
Hmm.
where you're willing to be the best version of yourself, even if you're not quite sure what that looks like. You just want to do your best, and you're striving to become the best person that you can possibly be. That's who the show is for. And I find that I'm very drawn to creating a show that is a safe show, if you will, for
Hmm.
the Christian entrepreneur, where they can listen and not be given confusing or conflicting information with what their core values are, in terms of faith and things like that. Because out of all the podcasts I've listened to, unless it's incredibly religious or spiritual, where it's like every other word is incredibly religious and it's going to be hard to understand and listen to if you're not like a Christian,
Hmm.
or it's completely just amalgamation of different religions and beliefs and spiritual systems all into this one podcast where you're like, well, what do I choose? Do I take this apple, this cherry, this piece over here, that thing hanging there? So what I try to do with this show is I bring a show together where I believe it's a safe place for a person of faith to actually listen to the advice. And I always say to people, take it with a grain of salt. Do not just listen to anyone's words of advice, or if they say it's wisdom. Like, I always say, take it with a grain of salt, no matter who it is, what they say it's about, or where it's coming from. It's important.
Yeah, I mean, because no matter what we do, we're all coming from different circumstances and we're
Yes,
different people. So even if we do the exact same thing, it's probably going to show up differently in our lives.
that's right. Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
so
Yeah, so I'm also trying. Something I'm trying to do, Nathan, lately is stop saying
yeah,
things as if it's like a matter of fact, because I'm not God. So who am I to say something like that's right? It's like, well, you think it's right. So I'm trying to find ways of saying like I agree with you, or
yeah,
instead of just saying like what I just said, which was that's right. Instead of that, saying something like I agree with you, because that kind of reflects a more humble spirit where you're not just yeah. But anyway, that's kind of where my mind's going.
yeah. No, that's a good tip right there because everything that we do is from our experience, and we don't know necessarily if we are right, right? It's just something that we've experienced, and it could be completely different at a different point in time. So what's right today could be proven wrong tomorrow as well.
That's where we disagree. I think there are absolute truths.
Yeah.
However, again, I don't know that anyone can know. I think there's faith involved in no matter what you choose to believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, without faith, I don't think I would be here either. Uh,
Yeah, man. I
so
feel you.
I can definitely agree with you there. Um, so I've only got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah, man.
So what is your like ultimate goal if you look, because what did you just hit 100 episodes?
I did not hit 100, hit 87 and almost 100. Yeah.
Okay.
Going on 100. That's it.
So
I'm sorry, that's interviews and the Friday episodes combined. And then with like we started doing micro episodes on midweek occasionally. So it's I don't count those as an episode.
I
But
got you.
yeah.
I got you. Um, so as you look into the future for the show,
Yes.
what is something looking to, let's just say looking to episode 100? What's something you are looking forward to when you get to that day?
Uh I'd say just continuing on with the way it is, improving 1% every day. Yeah. One of my friends, Chase Truning, gave me a great tip. He has a good podcast as well. In fact, his podcast has been around since I think late 2017, like January 2018 or 2017, something like that. But he's grown a lot really quick. It's Ever Forward Radio. He said, I think it was him. Yeah, I think he said treat every interview. It might not have been him actually. Well, anyway, free plug for Chase. Uh, yeah, he said like treat every single interview like it's the guest of your dreams, and that's actually a great tip because one, it's going to make your guest feel amazing. It's going to give you a better interview. The experience is just going to be overwhelmingly better. Hopefully, I mean, hopefully you're not choking or anything, but you're also going to have practice then when you do get that guest on your show. And you also realize too, like when you're getting guests of notoriety, I like to say, because notoriety is very doesn't mean anything. It just means that they're well known. It doesn't mean that they're more important than anyone. It doesn't mean that
Yeah.
they're anything more valuable at all. It just means that they're well known. So notoriety, you will notice that exactly that they're just people, and you just treat everyone equally. And in fact, the best way to get along with people of notoriety is to treat them uh, incredibly directly, but also with respect. And but biggest thing I learned is everyone's a person, man. We're all people, just people, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the latest episodes you did was with Dave Meltzer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think about his questions all the time. So
Hmm.
he's all about service, right? And I think what you just said uh, can help with the questions of how can I best serve you?
Hmm.
The question of what can do you know anyone that can help me as well? Because when we look at somebody as just a person, they don't get put up on a pedestal
I like it.
where we don't we feel like we can't make that approach because they're higher than us. We all
Yeah,
are on a same plane.
exactly right. Everyone is I believe everyone's created equally, man. 100%. Yeah. I think a
Um,
big thing. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
no, go ahead.
I think a big thing is I'm trying to get that thought back. It was a really good point.
Oh man.
You ever have those moments?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe as we continue to talk, it'll come back to you.
Sure.
So first, I want to go ahead and have you tell everybody where they can follow you or connect with you.
Okay. Now?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes. If you want to check out this podcast that I host, it's called the Heart Healthy Hustle Show. So think of Cheerios, like heart healthy, and then hustle. It's at Heart Healthy Hustle on Instagram. If you get plugged into us on Instagram, you'll be set because all the links are on the bio. You can go directly to it on iTunes. Just search Heart Healthy Hustle and give us a listen. I think you'll like it. If not, sorry, I wasted your time. I don't think you'd have any issue with it though. You've heard? Have you heard it, Nathan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
No, nobody should have an issue with it, and even if they don't like it, I don't think that it would be a waste of time. You'll
Cool.
definitely learn something from it. From my experience, I've learned a lot from listening, and I'll make sure and drop all that in the comments below, so you guys will be able to go right there when you're watching. And the last two questions I have is I want you to imagine your 5-year-old self
Little rascal. Yeah.
and who knows yourself on the last day of your life,
Oh, jeez.
and you guys are meeting each other.
Whoa. Dang.
What do you want?
Oh.
Both. Well, let's go one at a time. What do you want your younger self to say to yourself on your last day?
Well done. I'm proud of you.
Awesome. And then what do you want your older self to say to your younger self?
Oh my gosh. A lot, but oh, so much, right?
Okay, one thing.
One thing. Um, God wants you to do well. Trust His plan. Accept Jesus' love. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to help you. The truth is your friend. It's not an intrusion. It's your friend. And trust. Trust God. Trust others. Trust yourself. That's big.
And that's some awesome advice. If we could all get that advice, it'd be an amazing world.
I hope so.
Um, and then the final question is, what does no label defines me mean to you?
No label defines me. Means to me that no matter how I come across in the world, no matter what others think of me, no matter what anyone, anytime, anywhere, any place wants to believe about me is none of my business.
All right, I like that. That is a great point of view.
Yeah, man.
And before we go, is there anything that you would like to leave the viewers or listeners with?
Yeah, man. I just want to let you guys know I've been in touch with Nathan since last fall, and you are in a world of hurt if you, I don't know how to say that correctly. You are in for quite a ride of joy, of energy, of just like a contagious attitude of can do. I mean, I don't know how whoever's listening, I don't know how well you know Nathan, but I don't know you as well as I would like to. Let's put it that way. Just keep doing what you're doing, man, and like keep being open to learning and growing and trust the process, man. It's gonna work out really well. I think one thing I would say is don't be romantic. I want everyone to hear this. Don't be romantic about what you want to working out. Don't be romantic about that because
Mm.
if you're not going to be honest with yourself, it's it's hard for others around you to do it because they see that you're not being honest with yourself and they don't want to hurt your feelings. So always be real with yourself. Just because you want something to work out doesn't mean it will. Maybe it will. That's awesome. But also be willing to take the road less traveled and find ways to achieve your goal, even if it's not the route that you thought it was going to be, because it's almost never the route that you thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anybody on the entrepreneur journey, if you don't know that,
Yeah.
figure that out quickly.
You're definitely right. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And I want to acknowledge you for coming on and being as open and vulnerable as you've been, sharing about your story. And if you're not following Jonathan, you got to do that, man, because he's an authentic and vulnerable leader, and he's making a difference in the world. And he's supporting people in getting tips and tools so that you are not stressed out. You are being your best self. And as you say, hopefully I don't mess this up, you are living life wide open.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You know what? So what does that mean? I know I said we were done, but what does that
No, dude.
mean to you?
I love talking with you, Nathan. Yeah, so that actually came about. That's like my life mantra right now, because after I lost my friend last year to suicide, I was sitting in the car on a Sunday morning or afternoon. I was confused and angry at the situation, angry at him for doing it, angry at God, not really God as much as confused. Like, why'd you let this happen?
Mm-hmm.
I was willing and able. I had traveled to see him. I was trying to keep in touch with him. I was letting him know I was there, and all these things. So I remember sitting there in the car, and I'm listening to this song, and I just started like really recognizing that there's nothing I could have done more, or that it wasn't for me to carry the burden of this loss, and that it wasn't my choice, it wasn't my fault, and that I needed to let it go. However, I'm not going to let this go to waste, if you will, in terms of his life's value. So, not to say that this changes his life's value, of course it doesn't, but listening to this song, and at the end, the guy just keeps saying, he's like, I will climb this mountain with my hands wide open. And he kept saying it. I just broke out into tears. And I just like looked up the roof of my car out of the skylight thing. And I just like looked into the sky, and I was like, I hear you, God. Like, I got you. I know what you're saying. And it was amazing because when I heard the words wide open and climbing the mountain, like the mountain of life, because it's freaking hard,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, you're going to live wide open from now on, and it's going to be wide open about what you believe. It's going to be wide open about, it's going to be wide open about full throttle. It's going to be wide open, open hands, like living generously, giving, like open handed instead of closed fists, like me, a miser with your energy, your time, your resources. It's about living wide open. And yeah, it's going to be messy. Yeah, I'm going to crash sometimes. Yeah, I'm going to fall down sometimes. Yeah, I'm going to fail a lot more than I would have if I just stayed safe and tight and closed off. But you know what? I think that's going to make a heck of a more beautiful painting than if I wasn't. So that's where that live wide open comes from.
Beautiful, man. Thank you for sharing. And if you guys gained any piece of wisdom, any anything that you're like, I connect with that, that's relatable, that's something that I've dealt with myself, make sure and give us some feedback, give us a like, give us a comment, connect with both of us, and share this with somebody you feel needs to hear it. And with that said, I'll catch you next Friday.